Today on Empty Pocket Speed Shop, we're going to take my 1955 6400 series 2-ton Chevrolet truck that hasn't moved or ran in over 2 years, and we're going to get this thing fired up and take it for a lap around the hayfield. So you guys stay tuned, watch my latest video, and let's see if we can get this thing going. Hey y'all, it's Sean here with Empty Pocket Speed Shop. I know if you watched my introduction video that came out a few days ago, you're probably expecting me to be in the shop working on my 1949 Studebaker Merle. But we finally had some nice weather here in Middle Tennessee, and I've got this truck behind me for sale on Marketplace, and a few people have been messaged me about the truck, and I put in the ad that it runs and yard drives, but I haven't had the engine started in almost 2 years. So I've been waiting for a break in the weather to come out here and do a little work on this truck, see if I can get it running again. Some of the things it's missing is a fuel system and a charging system, a belt, a few other things, a battery I'll have to put in it, so I'll have to round up a battery around here somewhere. So before I get started actually working on the truck, I'll do a quick walk around and share with you guys what I've done to it. So as we look at it, you'll see this is a 1955 Chevrolet 2-ton truck. So it's a 6400 series, and I bought it a few years ago. My plans were to make a car hauler out of it. I wanted to have a old, just a flatbed dovetail car hauler that I could haul some of my old cars around on. I thought that would be cool. Did a lot of work to it, putting axles under it, upgrading some of the parts, but it still has the original engine and transmission, and I just never did get around to finishing it. Had a lot of work done to it, and you know how it is with project vehicles, you just get busy working on other things. So it's been sitting here beside my house for the last 2 years. It hasn't moved, and you can tell by all the junk that's piled on the bed that truck became the place that if I had something and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I didn't want to throw it away yet, I would throw it on the back of that truck and think, well, I'll find a place for this later. And here we are 2 years later, and it's just piled up full of junk. I did round up several parts that I think I can get this thing going again. Like I said, I drove it to, I pulled it back with a chain a little bit earlier. I did that off camera, but it was parked up here beside my garage. I drove it to where it was sitting, but it's been there for a couple of years without being started and without having anything done to it. So I'm hoping it'll still run, but hey, I guess we'll dive into this thing and see. So for all of you guys out there that like revival videos and things of that nature, this will be sort of along those lines, because I don't know if this thing will still run or not. I will apologize since I'm outside working on this truck. Got a little bit of breeze blowing today here in Tennessee, so we may get some wind distortion in the microphone on the video. I apologize for that. Also, you may hear some dogs barking in the background. We may hear, there's dogs barking in the background. We may hear the traffic going up and down in front of my house. It's not a really heavily traveled road, but there will be some traffic that goes back and forth. So you guys bear with me on this video. I'm going to do a quick walk around on this truck and let you know. And I'll just throw this out there. If any of you guys are looking for a truck like this, it is on Facebook Marketplace, listed for sale. in Middle Tennessee. So jump on there and check out all the pictures that I have, but you guys will see all of the details about it as I do a little walk around real quick. All right, like I said, this is a 1955 6400 series. That's a 2-ton truck. Um, it is a fairly solid cab. It's one of the more solid cabs I have found in this generation of truck. If you don't know anything about these old Chevy trucks, mid-year 55, so this is 55 second series, and 55 second series through 59 all use the same cab and doors. 55 and 56 use the same fenders and hood. 57 was different, 58 and 59 was different. But this truck, since it was a heavy duty truck from the factory, it came originally with a 235 inline 6-cylinder granny 4-speed transmission with a 2-speed rear end. I have replaced the rear end. This was a 18,000 GVW truck when it came out from the factory. So like I said, this is the original seat. It's a pretty solid old truck. Of course, I've taken the original fuel tank out of it. It was leaking anyway, so I just took it out. It does have a little bit of rust around the windshield, but almost all of these that had the cab marker lights on them have that. But overall, it's a really solid truck. What we did, had a friend of mine help me work on it. He did some of the work for me. We took the original wooden flatbed off of it, and I bought a log truck that had this 16-foot long steel flatbed, and we swapped it over to this truck. It's not even 100% securely bolted to the truck yet. It's just on there good enough to hold it down. So I've got to finish doing that. I was going to dovetail the last 4 feet of it somewhere around where the mud flaps are at there and make a ramp truck type deal out of it. Just haven't got around to it. The axles that are under this truck now came from a 2001 FedEx truck. So it does have 4-wheel disc brakes on it now. It has modern 19.5-inch wheels, so you can run radial tires. These U-bolts that are laying here on the bed, that's some of the stuff I bought to help secure this bed to the frame a little bit better. As you can see, if it'll show up under here, we've got some brackets made that are holding the bed on. I think we've got 4 of them on there right now. But the old truck, as you can see, is really solid. Even the cab corners are solid. Everything's good on it. Both doors open and close. Both windows still roll up and down. Got a lot of good parts, and it would be a really good project to finish. And I guess if nobody buys it, eventually I will finish it. I don't want to crawl under the truck right now to show you, but it does have a power disc brake master cylinder mounted under the cab. It was one of those that's made for this truck. This fender right here that has the damage, somebody ran into whatever, I don't know, because they missed the bumper and they got the fender. I have another fender in the shop that I found at the Tri-5 show a couple of years ago that came off a 4400 series truck, which is the exact same fender. It's blue, I think, instead of green. But it's a really good fender. It's got one little dent in it, and of course it has the little bit of rust down the bottom. But overall, it's a really good fender to replace this bent one. Or if a person wanted to, they could just straighten this one out so that you wouldn't lose the matching patina that it has for the rest of the truck. If a person was gonna put it back on the road, use it all the time, it would definitely need a windshield. That would be the opportunity to take the windshield out, fix that rusted spot around the windshield, and then have a new windshield put in. You can kind of read on this thing. I'm not sure if it'll show up on my phone because out here in the sun I can't really tell what I'm seeing here. But on the hood, it has sold 2nd of 1996 to someone named D. Wesson. That's not who I got it from. That was a long time ago. But if I had to guess, I would say that's probably the last time this thing was actually on the road running and driving. When I bought it, the engine would fire up and run. So that's how I kind of left it. The only things I've done to it is a few upgrades under the hood to make it, I swapped it over to HEI, and I'll raise the hood up and show you guys that in just a second. All right, I got the hood open so you guys can see under the hood of this thing, the original 235 6-cylinder. And the only thing that's been upgraded is the HEI ignition. And I only did that because when I bought it, it had a Pertronix electronic adapter in the original points distributor, and it burned out. And instead of going that route, I just put an HEI in it. Still has the generator. The belt is non-existent. It looks like it is. It looks like it's in okay shape from this view. Let's see if I can find the spot. It dry rotted and disintegrated on me, but I don't see. I'll show it to you when I get it off. I've got another belt that, according to O'Reilly's, is the correct one. So what I'm going to do right now is I will get my camera set back up, and I'm going to start checking some of the stuff out on this thing, because what I want to do, I've got a pile of parts back here on the bed that I brought out here from the shop. Got my starter button, I've got some fuel line, I've got my little 3-gallon drag racing fuel cell that I use for temporary fuel system. Got an electric pump, there's the belt. So I'm going to throw some parts on this thing and see if I can get it fired up. But before I do that, I need to check some fluids. Like I said, this thing's been sitting out here beside my garage for about 2 years and hasn't been started or moved. So with any good graces going on today, then hopefully I will get this thing running again. All right, so I got my camera moved around. I think it will show a lot of what I'm doing. If I'm doing anything that I need to do a close-up view on, then I'll take the phone over there and do a better view. But for the most part, I'm going to try to just walk through some things on this. But if you guys watched my last video, and then so far you're watching this video, all I've done so far is talk. So I figured I better actually do some work on a car, or all you guys out there are going to think I'm a politician. So what I'm going to try to do is actually get to work on this thing. So you guys bear with me. I will try to do my best to talk through what I'm doing. Hopefully the wind distortion won't be too bad. And see if we can get this thing checked out and get everything temporarily wired up so we can hear the engine fire again. Because it's pretty neat. If you guys don't know anything about these old trucks, in the 55 model, it still had the starter button in the floor instead of starting it with a key. And this truck still has the starter button in the floor. So it's one of the things. I had a modern engine and transmission that I was going to put in it to make a car hauler out of it. But if the truck doesn't sell, I'm almost tempted to leave it all stock like it is, with the 6-cylinder, the 4-speed transmission, the starter in the floor, and just mount a fuel cell on it, get the wiring done on it, swap it over to a 12-volt system with a 1-wire alternator, get everything working, and then patch up some of the rust holes within it so that it doesn't get any worse, and drive it like it is. I know I've got the Studebaker truck, and as I've walked around, you've probably seen there's a couple of other trucks sitting around here. I've got a 96 Chevy dually over there that I pull my trailer with. And then my wife's got an old 78 C10 sitting over there. So we have other trucks in the family that I can haul trailers and haul cars and do things like that with. This might just be a fun piece to leave it like it is, clean it up really good, and put some satin clear over it to protect the patina, and just leave it a patina 2-ton log truck. But we'll see. Maybe somebody will come along and buy it so I can have that money to use on some of my other projects. But for now, we'll check some things out and see if we can get this thing going. One of the things I've been afraid of over the last 2 winters, because I did not check this thing to see if the antifreeze was any good in it. to make sure that it didn't freeze the engine and bust it. So this is the first time I've taken the cap off the radiator in a couple of years. And much to my delight, there's still some fluid in the radiator. So one of the things that I'm going to do once I get this thing running again, because it's the end of January, so I do expect that we'll have another hard freeze or two before springtime. But it was down in the single digits here a couple of weeks ago, and this thing still has coolant in it. And I don't see any freeze plugs blown out of the engine, and I don't see all the coolant ran out of the engine. So for now, I'm hopeful that this thing is going to be fine. So if I get the engine running again to where I can get it to circulate, then one of the things I'm going to do is drain this down a little bit because it's still relatively full. I'm going to drain it down and put some fresh antifreeze in this thing to protect it and make sure. And probably what will happen if I do that, this antifreeze that's in it is probably 20 years old, and it's keeping it from freezing for the last 2 winters that I've had it sitting out here beside my garage when it gets down to, last year it got down to 5 below or 6 below or something like that here in Tennessee, and this thing was fine. And 2 weeks ago it was 6 degrees here at my house, and it's fine. So if I drain it out and put some fresh antifreeze in it, then the next time we have a cold spell, it'll probably freeze and bust everything. Because the things that we buy these days is not as good as the old stuff. This thing, I'll show you a little bit of a close-up. When I had my camera in here a little bit earlier, you probably noticed there was a rag just laying over the side of the carburetor. And I had this rag just covering up the end of the fuel line to keep dirt daubers from crawling up in the fuel line and building this inside the carburetor. This thing does still have the original oil bath air filter housing on it. And I will have to take this off because I know even putting an electric pump on it and getting fuel into the carburetor, this thing to take a little work to get it started. I'll probably have to spray a little carb cleaner in here. Trying not to drip oil all over everything. I'll show you guys this oil bath air. So if you've never seen one of these oil bath air cleaners, and some of you guys that work on old cars, you have for sure, but it really is, there is a pool of oil down in that housing, and the top piece that I just took off and set on the bed, it pulls in air, and the air is cleaned by the film of oil as it goes into the engine. I don't know how well they work, but that's what came on all of the old vehicles. That's what my Studebaker truck had on it when I first bought it too. I did let the guy have the oil bath air filter housing and everything when I sold the original engine and transmission out of the Studebaker. So there we go. So we still got coolant. The air filter went on. This thing's still got some oil in it. Grab the. So give you guys an idea of how tall these trucks are. I'm 6'2", and I still have to have a block of wood to stand on to reach over in here very far because these 2-ton chassis, they set up really high, and so they are really big trucks. Still full of oil after a couple of years. Alright, I'll probably have to take some of that out of the video. It took me several tries to get the dipstick back in the dipstick tube. It did not want to play. I think one of the first things I'm going to do here is try to take this generator belt off. Now that I'm looking at it, oh, too big. Okay. I was trying to show you guys that the generator belt had disintegrated. It dry rotted and disintegrated, and I was looking at the belt that's on there, and it's still in one piece. I thought, man, this is not making any sense. I know this belt disintegrated. Well, it appears as though I went to the shop and found a belt that I thought might work, and I tried to put it on there, and I adjusted the generator all the way out to the end of the adjustment, and it's still not tight. So that's why it has a belt on it that looks like it might still be good. So hopefully the one that they gave me at the warehouse is good. I'll get this thing loosened up, and we'll try to see if we what I'm going to do real quick is got that belt that's too long, got this belt that's too short. So I'm going to run in the shop really quick and see if I have something that's in between the two. So I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I know you guys are probably like me. It doesn't matter. Anytime I put new belts on anything, I don't ever throw the old ones away. So I've got a stack of old belts in there from different project vehicles over the years. Eventually I do throw some of them away, or I use them for something or whatever. I did not have anything the correct length to be able to put over the generator and tighten it up the proper way. But for today, all I'm trying to do is get this thing running again. I could run it without the water pump running, but I would only want to do that for a few minutes because I wouldn't want to overheat this thing and blow a head gasket or do something else. And these old engines can take a lot of abuse, but this one is, since it's the original engine, it's already 70 years old. This is a 1955 model, so it's a 70-year-old truck, a 70-year-old engine. I don't want to do anything to it that's going to cause permanent damage. So I did look through my belts, and I found one that is short enough that I think I can just put it around the crank and the water pump, and it may not be super tight, but it'll probably work good enough just to spin the water pump, since all I'm going to be doing is running it right here. If I get it running, even with no brakes, we're going to take this thing for a lap around the hayfield. So You guys bear with me. I'm going to try to put this belt on the crank and water pump. And if it's tight enough that when we get it fired up, it's spinning the water pump, then I'll feel good enough about it that we can move this thing around and let it run for a few minutes. Like I said, I'd really like to drain some of this water out of the cooling system and refill it with some fresh antifreeze. So let me see if I can get this thing on here. Um, so hopefully this will show up. So I got it on the pulleys, but it's really loose. I don't think that would ever even grab enough to spin the water pump. So my second choice of what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to get a piece of angle iron bracket that I have out here with multiple holes in it. If you can see the way the generator bracket is. So what I'm doing, the belt that I have that's a little bit too long, it's bottoming out right here on this bracket before I can get the belt tight. But I have some angle iron out here that's like garage door hanger angle iron that's got holes all in it. I think what I can do, because I only need to be able to adjust it another inch or so, I think I can bolt a piece of that angle iron onto my original alternator bracket here, or generator bracket, and bolt the generator onto the piece of angle iron out here somewhere. And I think I'll be able to tighten up the wrong belt that I have. So let me grab a piece of that and some nuts and bolts, and I want to see if I can get this belt on here properly before I move forward with hooking the fuel system up, because really getting the water pump turning is one of the major things that I want to get done before we start trying to hook the fuel system back up and get this engine fired up again. Alright, I built a piece of bracket. This wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but I think this will work. So what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to get the camera over here and get it looking down in here where you guys can see what I'm trying to do. Instead of me just talking you through it, maybe I can show you what I'm doing. Okay. All right, I think I've got the camera set up where you guys can see what I'm doing, so it'll actually give you a break from looking at me for a second. I don't know if you guys can see what I've got going on here. There was still a piece of wire hanging on the grill of this truck, or on the core support, where I had this thing strapped to it last time. So use that piece of wire. I am going to go ahead and put some of these zip ties together. And before you start laughing about my neon pink zip ties, just know that they were free. I don't remember why they were free. I don't remember where I got them. I do remember that I did not purchase these, and I bought something that had 2 or 3 packs of pink zip ties in it. I was like, you know what? Free is free. And since my pockets are empty, I'll take free anytime I can get it. So don't judge me too harshly. And the only reason I'm adding these zip ties is because if I do get it running today and we want to go around the hayfield, I'm afraid this little one piece of wire that I've got would not hold up well enough to keep the fuel tank from falling off. And then I would be stranded out in the middle of a hayfield in a 2-ton truck by myself. That far. I want to be able to drive it out to the field and drive it back over to the house. We're probably going to move some things around and get this thing put under the shed. I've been wanting to get it moved out from this one spot that has been sitting there for 2 years anyway. So if we can get it running today, we're doing something else with it. So let me grab the fuel pump. You guys, working on a lot of old junk like me, a lot of times, if I decide to get this thing running for real, it has a spot for a mechanical fuel pump, and I'll just replace that and hook the mechanical fuel pump back up. I won't keep it on an electric fuel pump long term. But just for the purposes of getting this thing running today, so that we can move it around, I don't want to go buy a specific mechanical fuel pump for this truck. One of the reasons why was I wasn't sure if I was going to leave this engine in it, although I did spend money on the distributor back when I first got the truck. But O'Reilly sells these fuel pumps that are precision brand, has a lifetime warranty, and I will tell you the part number. See if I can get it in here. I don't know if it'll focus on that or not. I can't tell. But it is Echo 16010. These are a low pressure electric fuel pump, but they are not the cheap outbound like stuff like you see on YouTube channels. And like I do, just to get these are heavier built. They're actually factory replacement fuel pump. I can't remember which vehicle we looked up to find this thing because it's been a long time ago when I figured out what this part number was. But I do know that you can put these on a carbureted vehicle with no pressure regulator and they operate fine. I believe when we looked them up, it said the operating pressure was between 6 and 7 pounds, which is exactly what you and bear with me. I think what I'm doing here is I'll probably I've got a hose right here that I'm going to put it in to hook to my fuel cell, and then I'll use one of these to come out of this pump and go into a filter, or I may put the filter first. That way it's filtering the fuel before it goes into the pump. Maybe it'll make the pump last a little bit longer. But either way, we are going to put a filter my electric wires up. I've got a little jumper harness with some alligator clips so that when we get ready to do this, all we'll have to do is put the alligator clips on the battery to turn the pump on and off. The problem with doing things the way I'm going to be doing them today is everything is temporarily hooked up under the hood. Nothing works off the key switch, so you can't turn the engine off from inside the truck. You can't start the engine from inside the truck. So you have to start the engine out here, and then when you get to where you're going, you have to get back out of the truck and raise the hood to turn it off, because I don't want to go through the trouble of running inside the cab for today. All I'm doing right now is I'm going to tighten these fittings up in the pump housing so that we don't have any suction problems or fuel leak problems. Because of where I'm putting it, a fuel leak wouldn't be the end of the world because it would just be leaking to the outside on the ground. But it has a suction problem. These little electric pumps don't like to pick up and self-dry. Don't want to have to run back in the shop and grab the correct nut driver that I forgot to grab when I was gathering up tools for the project that I'm working on today. I know most of you guys that do, if you have everything set up in your shop where you work on stuff all the time, and then something comes up that you have to go out in the driveway and work on something, or out in the yard or anywhere else, I do have a carry around toolbox that I keep just for having to work on stuff out in the yard, because I don't want to have to keep running back and forth to my big toolbox in the shop, and I don't want to have to go in there and take 1,000 tools out of my big toolbox and put them in a little carry bag and bring them outside and work on whatever it is I'm working on, and then turn around and have to put it all back up. So I keep a secondary toolbox. This is one that I can put in my truck and take with me if I'm going to pick up a junk car. That way I've got some tools. Or if I'm working on something out here in the driveway, whether it's this or something else, then I've got a toolbox that I can grab, and it has a pretty good selection of tools. I would say it has a lot of tools that are necessary to work on stuff like this. Wouldn't be able to work on anything modern. I do have a few metric wrenches in it. But, so what we're going to try to do here is get this put together. I don't have any fuel in this fuel cell right now because since I didn't have a pump hooked up to it, it would leak out of this hose if you tilted it the wrong way. So it has very little fuel in it at the moment. So what I'm going to do here, now that I've got this connected, I'm going to zip tie the pump over here so that it's not hanging down and pulling on the hose. Then we'll be ready to run some wires and try to get this thing hooked up to the truck. Alright, so now I'm ready to run a hose from here up to the carburetor. We'll have the hoses hooked up, then I can grab my jumper harness, and I've got to go find a hot battery. I've got a jumper wire hooked to this HEI distributor. For those of you who don't know anything about HEI distributors, the reason everybody likes to go to that style of an ignition system, the coil is built into the distributor cap, and it really is, if you can get an HEI drop-in, GM style HEI drop-in, then it's one wire. You run a 12-volt hot wire to that distributor, you run that to your ignition switch, and when you turn the ignition switch on and supply it 12 volts, that's all you need. So for this setup, what I've got done right now is I have the hot wire going to the HEI and an alligator clip where I can just hook it to the battery when I put the battery in here. And that's how you have to turn the engine off, is you have to get out here and unhook that alligator clip. So if this thing doesn't sell, then after I get through with some of these other projects I'm working on, we may go ahead and get this thing running properly and plumb the brakes, because really this thing is closer to being drivable than Merle is. I just kind of got burned out on this project, so I stopped working on it, and I'm trying to sell it and all that. But I could put brake lines on this truck and finish the wiring and make it work properly off the ignition switch and wire up the lights and run some tail lights, and this thing would be street legal. The tires are old, but they still got good tread, and it's those 19.5-inch commercial tires, so I wouldn't be afraid to drive them around. I wouldn't want to haul a heavy load on them, but I definitely would not be afraid to just drive around on them. Alright guys, went out and found, so this is another thing I do, and usually it's just I don't want to waste something that's really good when I'm just trying to do a temporary deal like run this truck. So I got a box in my shop that I throw scrap wire, even if I'm throwing away a light fixture or a lamp or whatever, I'll cut the cord off of it and throw it in the box. So for doing something like this, I just grabbed a cut off piece of lamp cord or old extension cord or something like that. So the only thing that you have to do, if you have your voltmeter handy, you can ohm out the wires. Make sure that you're got the correct wire hooked to the correct terminal on your, but it's a pretty short piece of cord. So what I'm going to do, I do have some different color electrical tape. I'm going to put a piece of red tape on one wire and then just trace it to the other end, put a red piece of tape on the wire. That way I know, since this is a lamp cord and both wires look exactly the same, I'll just put a piece of tape on both ends. That way I can hook the one with the red tape on it to the hot wire on the pump, and the one with the red tape on it to the hot wire in my alligator clip. So since it's a short wire, it doesn't take very long to do it this way. If it was a really long wire and you didn't want to have to trace it out like this, then what I would recommend doing is getting your voltmeter and doing a continuity test. You can ohm it out. You can, some voltmeters have a continuity selector on it where you can just hook it on both ends, and if it's the correct wire, it'll beep. So you can do it either which way. Hopefully I did that right. And if I didn't do it right, then I'm going to edit all of this out and do it over again so that it doesn't make me look like an idiot. So that's where we're at with that. Alright guys, whatever you do, don't tell my wife, but I stole the battery out of her truck because I went in to look at the one I had sitting in my shop, and it was a side post, and the top post, and she has a 78 Chevy truck. It's a top post, and it's also really easy to grab the battery out of. So I went and grabbed her battery, and I probably will put it back pretty soon. You hook the battery cables up and make sure the starter still engages. You actually pull that line back off the carburetor and let it pump a little bit up on the ground here just to make sure that I can hook the hot wire up for the distributor. And we'll see if we can get this thing to fire up real quick. Hoping. But I do know that the last time I put fuel in it, I put ethanol free in there. Ethanol free doesn't go bad the way regular fuel does, but it has been a little while. Fill it all the way up. We need very much fuel just to go around the field at number 2 to get this thing to run. Stick that fuel supply line back down in my gas jug. See if this thing even comes on. Stranger things have happened. All right. Fuel pump. Fuel pump is fuel pumping. What I'm going to try to do, I'm going to get this line hooked back up. I'm going to spray some brake clean down in the carburetor. I know some of you will say, oh, you're not supposed to do that. It's a 70-year-old engine. I'm not going to hurt it. And I think what I'm going to do is, before I do anything else, I'm going to spray some brake clean down in the carburetor, hook the HEI up, and see if it fires. Because I want to see if it fires before I start pumping a bunch of gas in the carburetor. Run before. Since it's been sitting for 2 years, I don't know if the needle and seat is stuck in the carburetor. I don't know if anything's going to be working right. This thing ran pretty good the last time I had it running, but when you let something sit for 2 years without starting it, then you never know what you're going to run into. So before I go through the trouble of start pumping a bunch of fuel into the carburetor, I'm going to hook the HEI up, spray a little brake clean in there, and just see if it fires. Never know. Something may have went wrong with my HEI sitting here. I know that rarely happens. HEIs are pretty reliable. Even the aftermarket ones like I bought to go into this thing. Let me see if this thing will hit home. Yeah, okay. Alright. Just like that. Sitting here for 2 years, haven't done anything. And sure enough, down in the carburetor, fired right up. So let's see. Get some gas flowing through the carburetor and see if it'll stay running, and if I can make it run a little bit on its own. Or on there in such a way that they will stay hooked up when everything starts jarring around. Alright, so all I've got done, guys, I got my ignition system hooked up by an alligator clip to the battery. I've got my fuel pump hooked up. We've got the fuel pump hooked up to the carburetor. So I'm going to, as soon as I hook that ground cable up for the fuel pump, it's going to start pumping. And I don't want it to overload the carburetor. So as soon as I hook that up, we're going to jump in the truck and try to get this thing fired up. Because I don't know if all the gaskets and stuff are still good on that carburetor or not. Alright. Alright, you hear it running. So it did fire up. I'm trying to keep it running just a little bit. Still a little bit cool here. I don't know if I had my camera on it or not when I was starting it. That big foot coming through the floorboard there is the starter button. I've got the key on in the on position, but it doesn't have to be on right now because I've got the HEI distributor hooked directly to the battery. You can see this truck on the inside here. It was a factory radio delete truck, and all of that stuff is still here. So all this thing had was a heater and a defroster. If I end up keeping the truck, I'm probably going to try to make that old heater work. You can see it's got the old emergency brake handle there. None of that stuff's hooked up anymore. Just like the 2-speed shifter for the rear end's not hooked up anymore. All right, I need to get out here and see if the water pump's turning. There we go, it's staying running, kinda. All right, guys. You can see the old fuel pump diaphragm bouncing up and down there. That belt is flopping pretty bad, but it is turning the water pump. Got this thing running. The next thing I'm going to do is probably just going to put some zip ties together and put around the battery. It's running pretty good for something that hasn't ran in a couple of years. I'll tell you what, these old inline 6-cylinders, and it really doesn't matter if it was a Ford or a Chevrolet. I don't know that much about the Dodges. But the old Ford inline 6s, the old Chevrolet inline 6s, they didn't have a lot of power. They're kind of noisy. So you can hear this one rattling a little bit. Man, they're bulletproof. And they still, now you have to understand that these trucks, they weren't built like modern trucks. They were probably only good for 50 or 60,000 miles, and they were going to be completely worn out. Because back then, the oil wasn't as good, the machining tolerances weren't as good, so it wasn't like a modern engine. But if they survive the way this one has, and you can put modern oil filters, good fuel, all of that, you can still make these things last for a long time. There's a lot of people out there that are still running this 235 6-cylinder in their car, and they drive them all the time. And if I end up hanging on to this thing, that's probably what will end up happening to this one. I'll just get it running with this 6-cylinder in it, and it'll be another go into town, go pick up parts, go do whatever, just like my Studebaker is going to be. So let me get this battery strapped in. Put the breather back on it, because if we do go over in the field, I don't want it to suck any dried up grass and hay up into the carburetor. All right, so the next test is going to be, does the clutch still work? I'm assuming that it does. We'll find out here in just a minute. I apologize, I don't have my holder to be able to hold my phone up. I'm trying to remember where it is. sitting over in the motor home, actually. But, so, hang on. All right. This may or may not work very well. I kind of looked around on the bed. I don't see any. Wow. I can't believe that. The horn still works on this truck. I never knew that. I've owned this truck for like 4 years and I never knew the horn worked. That surprised me. Okay. I may have to keep the truck now just because the horn works. So to my wife, I'm sorry, I'm probably gonna have to not sell the truck now because listen to that engine purr and the horn still works. But back to what I was saying, I looked around on the bed. I didn't see anything about to fall off. So we're gonna take a chance. I'm gonna try to just go straight to the hayfield with this thing. If I can remember. There it is. The shift pattern is long gone from the shift knob. That's got to be reversed. There we go. See if I can get another gear out of this thing. There we go. Here we are, guys. I'm hoping that the water pump's turning enough to keep this thing cool. But if nothing else, we're gonna make a lap around the hayfield either way. Already out here now. Looks like I got lucky and there's just enough corrosion on the rotors to stop me when I got it back over here. So here we go, guys. Got that thing running, made a lap around the hayfield. There you have it. We accomplished what we set out to accomplish today. Got everything put back together on the old 55 2-ton. Got it moved out from where it was, made a lap around the hayfield. Now I'm going to try to clean out a spot to park it so that I don't park it back over here in front of my garage. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure you share it with your buddies. Tell everybody about the channel. If you're not already subscribed, then hit that subscribe button. This is the kind of content I'm going to be putting out. It's just me working on old cars, trying to make it where you guys can learn something, but also it'll be some interesting projects because If anybody doesn't buy this, then I'm going to continue on with it. At some point, I will get it in the shop so that I can do brake lines on it, get the brakes working. Then we'll hook up some lights and hook the ignition switch up and make it where it's a real driver and not just something that you can go around the hayfield in one time and then you got to put it back up, because it literally has zero brakes at all because there's no brake lines on the truck. So that's something I would have to address immediately if I decide I want to do something else with it. But for now, guys, that's all I've got for today. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching the video. I appreciate you hitting the like and subscribe button and sharing my video with your friends. And I'll see you next time on Empty Pocket Speed Shop.